So I'm here with Rick Bieber, the co-writer and director of Dead Wrong, a movie that I really enjoyed. Is that correct? Is there any kind of correction regarding that opening credit?
Uh, I wrote the script.
Okay,
It's adapted from a book, but I wrote the script and directed. Yeah.
okay, very, very good. So this movie, and I hope you take this as a compliment, I found it to be a very singular experience. This reminded me of some of the movies from throwback movies where it was unapologetic in its storytelling. There's a lot of stuff that happens. I'm thinking of a lot of movies from the 90s. I mean that as a compliment, not as a way that, oh, your movie is dated. Can you just talk about your singular take on Dead Wrong, which I found to be very gratifying and entertaining?
Oh, well, sure, and I don't disagree. I think it does have sort of a noirish, quality that that speaks of films made a couple of decades ago. As I mentioned, it's adapted from a book called Deadly Instinct that a friend of mine, sort of brought to my attention. He knew the author, Ken Clark, and had read it and thought that it would make a good movie. And when I read it, and I agreed. And what I liked about it was that as a crime drama, it's not a whodunit, right? You know who did it. There's no secret to that. It's really about a group of characters. There are actually sort of like nine principal characters in the movie, each with their own individual storyline, and all flawed, which I like. I like flawed characters. I like personality disorders. The more egregious, the better. And the film is really about how their lives are affected, and changed in sort of seismic ways when, as a result of the crime being committed. So it's really a character, film for me anyway. An opportunity to develop these characters and then to sort of bounce them off each other and see where the chips end up falling. Um, and that's the appeal. That's really the appeal for me.
Was it a no-brainer for you as far as casting Rob Schneider as the mob lawyer? Because I thought he really knocked this out of the park. What was it like collaborating with him? And how great is it for you as a filmmaker to see him shine in a role that he usually doesn't get with every project?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right about that, and I think that's what attracted him, to the movie in the first place. Um, yeah, I think his character Ethan Boggs, um, is a very sad character in some respects, someone who's very disappointed in himself and the way his life has sort of turned out. He's an attorney. He's, incredibly smart. He probably started out in a big firm with a big future ahead of him. And then addictions to, gambling and alcohol, really sort of caused his whole future to cave in. And so, he lives his life in this sort of sense of disappointment. He uses humor as a deflection, to, I think, in some respects, hide his image, of himself at that point. But there's this great balance of a character, with a lot of baggage on one hand, but also a sense of humor, very bright, very clever, very witty on the other. And Rob's perfect. I mean, he's perfect for it. And he walks that line between being Rob Schneider, and being Ethan Boggs, very, very well in the film. But Rob's, other than people know him obviously for his comedic chops and the films that he's done, and stand-up routines. But he's a very skilled actor. He's a very savvy, performer. He had a lot of dialogue, to learn in this movie. And of course, independent films is sort of code for having no time. You're moving ahead at lightning speed as far as your shooting schedule is concerned. So, it wasn't a situation where we could do take after take. He really had to come prepared and deliver on the day, and he did all of that. And he's a great guy. He's a joy to work with. and again, very savvy filmmaker. Always sort of good ideas, good input. I enjoyed being with him very much.
Okay, so on a stereotypical level, a cinephile will watch a movie and they're going to look at, with respect to your ensemble, they do all do a great job. They're going to look at Chet Hanks and they go, that must be stunt casting. But you're talking about disappearing into the role. He's a natural. Did you always know that he could really do that as well and submerge himself like that? Because he's very convincing.
Yeah, no, Chet's a great story. What happens for me anyway, because you write a script, you develop characters, they exist in your sort of mind's eye only until an actor actually reads the dialogue, and until an actor performs the scenes. So Chet's character was one that we were auditioning for, and truth be told, when I wrote the script, I had a very different type of actor in mind, and a very different sort of version of Chet's character in mind. And sometimes, as it happened, this time around, Chet came in and had an entirely different sort of point of view. I mean, his interpretation of the character was different than mine, but it was better. And I loved it, right off the bat. So yeah, I think he was very anxious to play a character like this, and he brought a great deal of intensity to the role, and it's fascinating to watch him. You really can't take your eyes off him.
Rick, I'm going to applaud you for this because this is Mill Creek Entertainment. It's going to be coming out on digital as well as Blu-ray. Can you speak
Yeah.
to the fact that a lot of people are saying Blu-ray is being phased out, but there are people in the know really talking about, there's a worth in curating one's own movie collection. Talk about your decision to put this out on Blu-ray, and I think that's a great decision for you and the movie.
Well, I hope you're right about that. um, yeah, obviously the industry has been so changed, right? In the last several years, you probably know this as well, or better than I. Streaming has changed the face of how movies are distributed and how they're viewed. So few people actually go to a theater, to see a movie anymore when it's so accessible to them, now digitally or, on the streaming platforms. So I think that a film like Dead Wrong, which, might have had a theatrical release 10 years ago or so, really has very few opportunities to have a legitimate, theatrical release today. So you look at what the alternatives are. In our case, it really seemed like this movie, and this is obviously in conjunction with Mill Creek's expertise and their distribution savvy, marketing savvy. This seemed to be the right platform, the digital platform, the Blu-ray, platform. I do think you're right. I think there is still an audience that loves to have a hard copy, and now with these elaborate, home systems, really see it and hear it in a very powerful way. So we're pleased. We're pleased with how it's being handled, and we just keep our fingers crossed.
Rick, I'm clueless. I'd still get the Blu-ray just with the movie itself. Do you know if there's any kind of special features or whatsoever? I wouldn't mind a Dead Wrong 3-hour director's cut. I'd be fine with that because I really enjoyed your film. But what do you know about the release? And if so,
Yeah, there is a director's cut, in addition to the final producer's cut.
wow.
And yeah, so and you know there were other scenes, that ended up being, I ended up editing out of the final cut. There's also some structural changes, in terms of the chronology, that we sort of went back to in our director's cut. So there are, there are some interesting, differentiations between the two. And I think it will add to the experience of owning the Blu-ray.
Okay, so then the owners of the Blu-ray, you would suggest
Yeah,
they go for the initial cut first, the quote unquote theatrical cut first, and
yeah,
then go into the director's cut. So just to see how
yeah.
you, okay.
Yeah, you see, yeah, because you see a bit of an evolution in that regard. The movie starts out a bit differently, and there are some sort of interesting, little twists during the course of the film. So yes, I mean, I agree with you. I think the way to do it is to watch the final cut first, and then go back into the director's cut and see where some of the evolution appeared.
Hard to hard to move that wonderful opening, but I can't wait to see the director's cut and see how you do it as a filmmaker. So a couple final questions. Rick, you were talking about
Sure,
lightning speed as an indie filmmaker. What do
that's right.
most filmmakers in your opinion get wrong when they only have very few time in their production? Is there something that they're overlooking as far as when you're going at lightning speed? What is the most important element as far as getting your film done effectively?
Yeah. I don't, it's hard for me to speak to others' experience. I've only directed that which I've written. And so when I have a sense of what the parameters of the budget are likely to be, I'm thinking about that as I'm writing the script. I'm making certain choices that I know will accommodate, perhaps a very tight, shooting schedule. Beyond that, I think that so much of it is a function of preparation. When you're on a tight schedule, and when you have to, really finish a number of scenes a day, especially if there are company moves that take up, a lot of time, you have to really be prepared. And I sort of like to think that, I've already made the movie in my mind, by the time I step on the set. And I've also spent a lot of time with the actors and, of course, with my cinematographer and those people who, will sort of work on the basis of a real shorthand. I'm very fortunate in that a lot of the people that I work with have worked with me before, so there's a lot of things that we understand about each other that don't have to be explained during the course of the day. So for me, again, a lot of it is during the process of writing the script and then casting and preparation. And your actors, have to really be, as I mentioned with Rob, they have to be able to deliver on the day and not take a lot of time.
Rick, I'm guessing on this on the final two questions. I
Sure.
was looking at your IMDb. I'm trying to remember. Flatliners was early in your career. Made in America. I think there's another underrated film called Hard Promises with William Peterson. I could be wrong
Yeah.
on this. Okay,
No, you're
so
right about
these films were early in your career, and
one of four people who probably remember that, but
okay. Well, I started back in '91 reviewing movies. I remember all of these films pretty
yeah,
much vividly. So all very good, by the way. So just wondering, I'm guessing you could have followed the producing path 100% of the way, and you're still a producer. But
yeah,
I'm guessing maybe in those early days, even with all the success of these movies, you decided, hey, I really want to direct. That was something that was such a burning desire. Is that true, or did directing come later in your producing career?
yeah. I think it developed. It developed over a period of time. I could always write. I felt like I could always write, and I worked a lot with other writers on the movies that you've mentioned, and after a while, you begin to, pick up a set of skills, and especially when you are working sometimes with less experienced directors, you consider what you would be doing, in if you were in their position. And so, yeah, at a certain point, I really felt like I wanted to, direct some of the material that I was writing, and it just, sort of worked out that way.
Okay, you seem like a really I'm underestimating you here, a hard worker. Are there a lot of scripts in your desk, in your computer, in your files that you are waiting to open and get the financing for and produce? And are there more stories in that whole kit and caboodle of your creative space?
Uh, yeah, without question, there are a number of projects that I do work on, and again, in this world of independent financing, so much of it is out of your control. Um, but I have a project right now, that a script that I'm finishing, sort of a psychological thriller with perhaps some supernatural overtones, and um, I'm hoping to get that up and running in the near future.
You're up at maybe 4 or 5 in the morning starting to write. Is that what is your schedule that makes you a successful writer and that you have projects, down the road and you're working on a quite, it seems like a daily basis as a writer.
Yeah. Yeah, I do set time aside, so that I can continue to work on the material. It's the way I can get movies made. The only way I can really effectuate, a film going into production is is by writing a script that attracts initially, the funding support, and then of course the talent, and then ultimately the distribution.
Yep.
It's the script is your Bible, it's your magnet. It all starts there.
Okay. Rick, final question. Right off the top of your
Yeah.
head, can you name one of your all-time favorite movies? Either one of your all-time favorite movies or a movie that you think might be underrated that we can actually pick and put it. It's called What's in the Box, and we can put your recommendations in the box. So on our podcast, we can pick these 1 or 2 films that you have in your brain.
So, I was afraid you were going to ask
Sorry, oh sorry.
Um, I mean, I have favorites that are the obvious favorites, and then
Sure.
there are some others that are a bit more subtle. Finding Neverland, I love that movie. Um, uh, it was just a beautifully written, beautifully directed, very soulful film, with obviously a magical sort of fabled, quality, which I like, sort of suspending reality and taking it to another level.
And it looks mortality in the face, doesn't it? It doesn't look mortality in the face, pretty much, that movie.
That's for sure. Yeah. So that's one title that comes to mind, but there are a million.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Dead wrong.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I am looking forward to the director's cut. Is it very quickly? Is it the same length as the original cut, or maybe a little
Pretty.
bit longer? Okay.
No, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same.
Okay.
There are
Great.
some differences, but some subtle, some not so subtle, but it's pretty much the same.
Okay. So Dead Wrong, I believe in on digital and Blu-ray, May 21st.
Yes.
Great. Rick, thank you so much for your
All right.
time. Really
All
enjoyed the
right.
film.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.